The internet is exploding right now over a speech that right-wing commentator and Daily Wire host Michael Knowles just gave at CPAC. Watch.
There can be no middle way in dealing with transgenderism. It is all or nothing. If transgenderism is true, if men really can become women, then it's true for everybody of all ages. If transgenderism is false, as it is, if men really can't become women, as they cannot, then it's false for everybody too. And if it's false, then we should not indulge it, especially since that indulgence requires taking away the rights and customs of so many people. If it is false, then for the good of society, and especially for the good of the poor people who have fallen prey to this confusion, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology at every level.
Now, I'm going to criticize Michael's remarks here extensively because I think they are extreme, inflammatory, and deeply counterproductive. But I do want to point out that some of the backlash he's getting is not fair based on what he actually said. Many liberal media outlets have claimed that Michael Knowles called for the quote-unquote eradication of transgender people. But he actually said that he wants the eradication of transgenderism, which he views as an ideology. This might sound semantic, but that's actually an important distinction. The eradication of transgenderism would mean forcing transgender people to live as their original biological sex. Michael has elsewhere even called for banning transgenderism. But it doesn't necessarily mean putting people in camps and killing them, which is how some have interpreted it. But I think if you watch the context of the speech, is clearly not what Michael Knowles actually believes or is advocating. In the same way that if somebody said they wanted to eradicate poverty, you wouldn't think that meant killing all the poor people, or even eradicate homosexuality. Gay people like myself would probably interpret that to mean forcing them through conversion therapy or to live as straight, not necessarily physically harming all of us. Although I can see how people interpreted it that way, because if you think about something like eradicating Judaism would mean you'd think eradicating Jewish people in a lot of people's eyes. So I think it's partly Michael's fault that he's being misunderstood or misconstrued because he used such extreme and inflammatory language and was not at all precise in his words, but I don't want to strawman him. I want to respond to what he's actually saying, and that is a call for eradicating transgenderism from society as an ideology, not transgender people who he just wants to be forced to live as their birth sex. With that caveat noted, I'll just say that Michael Knowles' position on this is authoritarian. It is illiberal, it is impractical, and frankly, it's kind of evil. Transgender people always have and always will exist. There will always be some small percentage of the population that experiences extreme gender dysphoria. Whether they're born with it or they develop it very early on in their lives, they feel this extreme incongruity between their birth sex and how they feel inside. This can cause extreme levels of depression and even suicidality. It is something I honestly wouldn't wish on anyone to have to go through, because imagine feeling like you're trapped in the wrong body your whole life. And for a lot of adults, what ultimately helps them with this extreme duress is living as the other gender. They can't change their biological sex, but they can live as the other gender, socially transition, and even medically transition as adults, and start to mimic a lot of the other things and eventually even pass as the other gender in public. Now, what Michael is saying here is that these people shouldn't be able to live their lives as free adults in the United States of America in the way that makes them happiest and resolves their deeply held mental duress, because he doesn't like it or agree with it. Now, let's be clear, he's entitled to that opinion, but there is nothing in line with traditional conservative principles like limited government or individual liberty that can coincide with telling people that they shouldn't have the right to live how they want because you don't like it. He literally wants to outlaw lifestyles he doesn't approve of and force his preferred way of life on the rest of the country. If you believe in freedom, that's not something you can support. It's also not going to work out too well for someone like Michael Knowles, whose extreme social conservative views are held by an increasingly tiny minority of the country. If freedom becomes up for a vote and we're forcing people to live the way that the masses want, it's not going to be your way that wins out, Michael. This whole push is also wildly impractical. Consider somebody like transgender commentator Blair White, who I'm a big fan of. She is a transgender woman, meaning she was born biologically male but identifies and lives her life as a woman. And she's even gone through extensive transition, including some surgeries and hormones and other stuff she's talked about on her channel. As a result, she very much passes as a woman. But under Michael's preferred framework, she would be forced to use the men's room. How does that make any sense? In fact, that's probably going to put her in danger and confuse kids who see her in the men's room and do all the things that Michael Knowles and conservatives like him say they're trying to prevent. I think what we're witnessing here is a prime example of the pendulum swinging too far back in the other direction. The far left has taken its gender extremity to absurd heights, with everything from neo-pronouns to non-binary identities to people who identify as otherkin to denying the biological realities inherent in sex that involve sports, to viciously attacking women like J.K. Rowling who dissent from all this, and to pushing irreversible, life-changing medical treatments and transitions on minors too young to fully understand or consent. All of that is worth scrutinizing and pushing back on, but you shouldn't do it by running to the absolute opposite extreme. The correct, reasonable middle ground approach here is that adults should be free to live their lives however they want, but they shouldn't be able to force other people to comply with them, and there should be protections for children and women's only spaces and some other things to accommodate everyone's interests and freedoms. But this extremist, absolutist, anti-trans position isn't workable, moral, or practical. In fact, if Michael Knowles' views catch on, he'll be handing the left a massive W. You see, if the choice is between their insane woke extremity or a pretty reasonable middle-of-the-road approach, let adults live their lives how they want, but, segregate sports based on sex because of biological realities and protect kids, the right wins that debate all day. But if the debate is between far-left insanity and far-right authoritarianism, I'm not so sure. A lot of people might understandably choose the left-wing version there, rather than literally making it illegal for transgender adults to live how they want. Many people will not be on board with this authoritarian, zero-tolerance approach. And I can't blame them. So Michael Knowles' position isn't just morally untenable, it's wildly impractical and politically suicidal. Yes, it will get him the attention he ordered and the hate clicks he's made a career out of chasing. And I admit I'm probably contributing to that in a tiny small way. But if Michael Knowles' ideas catch on, it will not just be the transgender community that suffers. His authoritarian worldview would also do immeasurable harm to the future of the American right, both in its principles and its political prospects. There's a much saner and more humane approach to be had here, guys. Alright everybody, thanks for watching. I'm Brad Polumbo. If you're new here, consider hitting that like button, subscribing, sticking around, and with that, I'll see you all in my next video.